So you're wanting to learn After Effects, and you've opened up the program here, and you're confronted by the user interface, and you're probably thinking to yourself, how do I use this program? Well, that's what we want to get started here. We're going to show you everything that has to do with the user interface, just the basic tour around After Effects. So the first thing you're going to want to do, right, is import some footage. Now there's two ways you can do that. Now, pay attention. Look, here we go. File, import, file. Open it up a little Explorer window. And the way you'll do is just navigate through the same way you do on your operating system. Find all the clips you're looking for. You click on them, you can select them all the same way you would normally in your operating system and click open. And you'll see those clips appear here in your project window. Okay, now there's a couple things you can do. You can click on it, hit enter, and you can actually rename that shot. So maybe it's called slider shot. There's some other cool things you can do with folders. You can open up a folder here. Maybe this is scene 1. And you can take all your footage, slide them into your folders. And what this lets you do is, keep your footage really organized. Now another thing you can do, and this is what I prefer, instead of using file, import, file, just double click here in the project window. And it'll do the exact same thing, just a little faster. You can import your footage the same way and, organize it using the structure you have. Pretty nice, pretty easy. Now, once you have your footage in here, the next thing you're going to have to do is create a new composition. Okay, and there's also two ways you can do that too. Composition, new comp. And this will open up a dialog window here that you can use to set up all your parameters for your composition. You can do your resolution, they have some presets that you can do, changing your frame rates, and you're going to want this to match what your footage is. Down here at the bottom you can also see you can change the duration of your composition. So right now this is a 10-second long composition. If we change that to a minute, just do it real quick. You just click OK. You'll see you have a minute-long composition here. So you set up a composition, you take your shot, you drag your shot down into the timeline. And you can see this shot's about 6 or 7 seconds long. So that's definitely shorter than our composition. Now another way you can create a composition is if we'll delete this one we just made. If you take the shots, the things maybe you have one shot you're going to work on. You take your shot and drag that down into this button right here. That's the create new comp button. You do that, it'll create a new composition that has all the exact same parameters as the footage that you're working with. So it'll have the same resolution, same frame rate, and the same length. And so if you don't know exactly, what footage that was that you're using, or maybe, I can't remember what that was, you can just drag it down to that button and it'll create a new comp that's exactly the same. Everything's going to be exactly the same as what's in your footage. So that's a nice way to be able to just kind of make sure you're not making any mistakes. Now maybe you decide, hey, here's my shot, and I need to add some length onto the end of that. You can always come up here to composition settings, and then you get the same dialog box. So right now the comp is 6 seconds long. We can change that to 8 seconds long, and you'll see the composition now has that extra space there, so you can add some more shots, or you can do, maybe you just need some more wiggle room. You can extend the clip, that kind of thing. Now moving down here to the timeline, you'll see the way After Effects works is everything is arranged in layers. So if I come up here and say layer, new, solid, and we're going to say, okay, well maybe we'll do like this green solid here, click OK. We'll have two different layers, and you see, all we see right now is the green because the green is on top of the other layer. If we take this layer, the footage, and drag it up on top of the green, then the footage shows up. And you can see if you move it, you'll actually see there's the green underneath. And so this is kind of the basic structure of compositing. It's all about putting layers on top of each other. And that's what you'll do with all the effects. And it's all about trimming, masking, and putting those layers up on top of each other. But you need to understand that what's on top is what you're going to see in your composition. It's just kind of a stack of paper kind of thing. One of the interesting things about After Effects is that it doesn't naturally just play things back in real time. What you have to do is render your footage to your RAM, or that's called a RAM preview. And so you'll see as I scrub along here, the timeline will start to build up these little green bars. That's because it's starting to recognize that footage and render it to the RAM. Now one of the best ways, and obviously the easiest way to do this, is to do a RAM preview. And so you can push play and it'll play back, but you'll notice that it won't actually do it in real time. Now if you want to play your stuff back in real time, this is what you're going to have to do, is this right here, RAM preview. You push RAM preview and it'll build a preview of all the green stuff all the way across your timeline. So that means everything's rendered to your RAM and you'll be able to play it back in real time. That's also how you hear audio. So build a RAM preview, you'll be able to see everything in real time, and you also hear your audio from your footage. It's kind of interesting that After Effects does, but the reason they do that is because when you're compositing and you have layers and layers and layers on top of each other, that's the only way you're really going to be able to see your stuff in real time. You're going to have to take the time to render that to your RAM so that you can actually watch it in real time. And that's definitely really useful if you're doing some heavy compositing where you have lots of layers. So one of the ways that you can manipulate your RAM preview is by using the work area, and that's this little thing right here. Your work area is something you can slide around, and it's kind of like, this is my area of focus right now. And if I have my work area set to this spot and I do a RAM preview, it'll play that area back and forth in a loop. Okay, so some quick hotkeys to manipulate the work area. You say come over to this spot, and this is where you know you want your work area to begin. You hit B for beginning. Maybe you drag over to the end of that thing there, and you say N for end. Okay, so B and N. Those are the two things you use to manipulate your work area. And if you learn the hotkeys, you'll definitely be a lot faster. You're going to be a sweet, freaking hotkey kind of guy. Okay, so that's how you manipulate the work area. Now you come up here and look. Here's all the playback options. Here's the normal play. Here's the RAM preview. And then there's some RAM preview options. But one of the things you want to do is just take a look here at this real quick. Frame rate, skip, and resolution. And so right now our frame rate is set at 29.97. That's what we want to keep it at. Skip means how many frames are you going to skip in your RAM preview. Maybe you've got something really heavy going on, or your laptop or your computer doesn't, you know, have the computing power to be able to handle some things. You can tell it to skip every other frame, or skip 2 frames, or skip 5 frames. And then you'll build up a RAM preview faster, but it's going to be more of a kind of a blocky image. Resolution, it has auto, full, half, third, or quarter. And so what this means is when you build up your RAM preview, you're going to do it at full resolution, half resolution, and obviously, you know, as you go further down, it'll take less computing power, but you're gonna have less resolution, less clarity. I like to keep mine at auto because that means it's whatever the composition is set at. Okay, so that's linked to this button here. So I can change my comp to full resolution. So I'm looking at all the resolution I have, half, third, and you can start to see here in the composition window how things get more pixelated. Okay, so I just like to leave this at auto, and then I'll change this depending on, you know, if I'm discovering that I need more computing power, I need to take, you know, less detail away from here, so I can start to get a better RAM preview. So I'm gonna leave this at half. Half's a good place to start. And one last thing for RAM preview, instead of coming up here and having to push this button every time I want to do a RAM preview, if you have a number pad on your computer, just hit 0. Hitting 0 will do the same thing. Now if we take a look in the composition window, there's a couple of things that you can do to move yourself around the composition window. First, here's the footage we're looking at. If you use your scroll wheel, you'll zoom into the footage. If you hold down Alt and then use your scroll wheel, you'll zoom into where your mouse is pointing. And so that's kind of nice to just kind of, well, we want to take a look at this thing on the wall, all that kind of stuff. Now, if you hold down spacebar, you'll see this little hand appear, and you can click and drag and move your footage. So that's really nice when you're up close, you're trying to look around, trying to find something, you know, really detailed, that kind of thing. So that's spacebar. You could see the same things up here at the top. There's a hand tool which you can use, which is just like holding down spacebar, or there's a zoom tool which kind of does the same thing. But I like to just use the normal tool, and then I'll hold down spacebar and use my scroll wheel and Alt to zoom in and out. You don't really need to use these tools that much. There are a couple other tools along the top here which get more involved with manipulating layers, and we're going to go over those things in a different tutorial. Now, one of the nice things about this user interface is it's kind of modular. You can move things around. If you need more space on one of these windows, you can go over here to the side of these things, move this stuff around. If you need to see more of your layers, you can move this up and down. But one of the really nice things is actually using the tilde key, which is right next to the number 1. If you hover your mouse over a window and hit the tilde button, it'll make that window full screen. And so that's really nice if you're trying to organize your clips, or you just need to see all of your layers as much as you can just for a second, and then you can go back. Or you just want to do a preview and see everything that's going on with the footage you have. Some of these obviously aren't as important, you know, because you don't need that much space. Come on. Another thing you can do is you can take these little tabs here and you can dock them and change it and customize your workspace however you want. So if you click on this little tab area here, you see that you'll be able to move it to any other part in the interface and dock it somewhere. So if I put it on the top here, these two windows now dock with each other. Or I can take it back, put it down on this area, and it goes back down to this side. You could even do on the side. Things start kind of getting crazy, but we're going to leave it on the bottom right there. Okay. Now, let's say you've finished all your editing, and now the last thing you need to do is render. So you've got the sweet shot, you've done your effects, your compositing, you've added a bunch of stuff in there, and you need to render. Now, the render is always going to be what's inside of the work area right here. Okay. So one of the things you do is maybe if you have a longer comp, you don't want to render this green stuff, or you have some extra stuff back there you don't need to do anymore. Bring your composition work area to tighten it up with what you need it to be at, and then right click on it and say trim comp to work area, and it'll trim your comp to your work area. So you finish your After Effects composition, you finished all your effects, and you want to get this thing outside of After Effects. You want to render this. So there's two ways that you can get that. You go to File, Export, Add to Render Queue, or you can use the shortcut keys Control Shift \, and that'll add that shot into your render queue. Now the two most important things you need to think about here is the output module and the output to. Output to just basically means where are we going to put this and what are you going to name it. Okay, so we name this slider shot or something like that and hit save. And then output module is what is it going to render as. So if you click on this, you're going to be confronted with all kinds of options. I mean, there's a ton of different options, but here are some of the best ones. Generally speaking, you're going to want to stick around QuickTime. This works pretty well, and there's a couple different formats you can use. If you come in here and go to video codec, you'll see all the codecs. Here's some of the best ones. Animation is a lossless codec. It's enormous. You're going to retain all of your detail and all of the stuff you're going to need, but it's going to be huge. Gigabytes, big file size. And sometimes that can be heftier than what we need. So it all kind of depends on what you're rendering that thing out for. Now, if you're rendering that because it's your final and you want to share it or you want to send it to somebody, a good codec to use for that is H.264, and you can set this up so you can be able to render that. It'll keep a nice file size. This is a nice codec that you can refer to as a deliverable codec. Animation is more of like what's called a intermediary codec, and so you can render that if you're going to send that shot to another editing program. You need to do some more work with it, and that way you don't lose any quality or anything like that in the middle when you're doing those transitions into other programs. Another nice one is Avid DNx HD codec. That one retains a lot of quality and is also a really nice intermediary codec. But if you're getting ready to deliver, you're getting ready to send the shot off to somebody so they can actually watch it, or you're going to upload it online, H.264 is a pretty good codec for general use in that way. Then you have all the other options here. You can resize it, you can crop it. Generally, if that's something you want to do, you can do it. That's cool. Or you can also check here, audio output. Click OK, and then when you're ready to render, you just hit render. There it is, the After Effects sound. And when you're all done, you can actually toggle this down, and you'll see this is where it rendered to, and you can even click this, and it'll bring up slider shot. There's your footage. There's that file that you used. Okay. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this was useful, and you've kind of found your way around the user interface inside of After Effects. If you want to move on to the next tutorials, we're going to start looking into the technique and how to start animating, how to start really using After Effects to its full potential. Okay, guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you later.